Hello there, Andre here from Peak Motorcycles. As you can see, today I'm not in the garage. Today I'm actually out doing a riding video. Quite often I don't bother with the cameras when I go riding, just because it's quite a lot of faff to get everything charged, everything mounted, everything moved off the tripods in the garage. But today I'm trying a few different things, so I thought it was a good opportunity to do some filming. So today I'm going to be riding a section of the Trans-Euro Trail. So this is a long distance trail that winds all across Europe, and the UK section of it passes very close to where I live. And I'm trying out a few new things, so I thought I'd record it. So the first thing I've changed is I checked my tyre pressures before I left, and it came from the dealer 22 psi front and back, which I think is a little high, especially when there's so many complaints around about the stock tyres. So I've lowered the rear to 18 and the front to 16. Still not too low. I don't have rim locks or anything like that, and I'm not expecting to do anything crazy. But yeah, I just thought I'd see if that gave me some extra traction. The ride over here on the road has been completely fine with them. The second thing I'm trying is I've actually put some topo maps on my BMW Navigator 6. So this is the sat nav that I use on my BMW. I put the bracket on my CRF300L. And generally it just routes on roads. However, I've downloaded the TET GPX, the Trans-Euro Trail GPX, and I'm going to try and use that for the navigation using some free topo maps that I downloaded. If it works, I'll do a separate video on how I found all these bits and how I got them onto the device and how well it works for navigation. The last thing really is just to check all the small changes that I've made to the bike, adding the handlebars, the handguards, the changes to the suspension, just to see how that rides. So that's enough of me talking, and as you can see I've got the first lane behind me. I've ridden here from home, so I'll crack on. This is about the point where I realised that the microphone on my helmet wasn't plugged into the GoPro. Anyway, it was only a couple of hours ago, so I'll have a go at narrating it instead. I started off down the trail. It was quite easy to follow the Garmin. The bike did feel a lot more stable than when I did my ride out the other day over to Buxton. This first bit of the trail is starting from just near Smalldale, which is not far from Doveholes in the Peak District just outside Buxton. It's a fairly smooth track. You could probably get a Land Rover down this quite easily. If you can just about make out on my Garmin, you'll see that the purple line, it's not giving me turning directions, but it's certainly showing where the trails are, and at the speeds I'm travelling at, it's pretty easy to pick it up. So this is a BMW Navigator 6, and all I've done is I've loaded the GPX from the Trans-Euro Trail website into the unit. I also downloaded some free topographical maps from the internet, which have seemed to work quite well. I'll certainly do a video showing how you can do that. I think there are additional ones to buy. I don't think they cover the whole country, but there's certainly a free Peak District one that I used. This is kind of the first hill that I came to go up. I had dropped the tyre pressures down from 22, which is how it came when they were delivered. Put 18 at the back, 16 at the front, and it just seemed to be just that little bit more comfortable, just that little bit more grip coming up here, even though I'm only using the stock tyres. The bike seemed to handle fairly well. I'm very much a novice on these sorts of green lanes. Luckily the limestone that most of these tracks are made of was dry. When it gets wet it can get very slippery, but as it is, the bike just coped with it really well. The trails in this part of the Peak District are a mix of these sort of limestone, I guess they're real roads, they just don't have a surface on them, even though you probably wouldn't get a regular car up and down them. And then you go from those to some of the paved sections, and the Trans-Euro Trail really does just link up all of these across the area. So one of the challenges you do have is that they are shared, and they're shared with walkers and dog walkers, people on horseback. So you really do have to watch your speed. There isn't always a lot of space for everybody to fit through. And there is an ongoing problem where if there's enough disruption or erosion or people going off the trails, that they have these things called TROs, which essentially closes the road for trails. So illegal riders and illegal drivers still use them, but for the rest of us who are trying to stay within the rules of the law, it does make it a bit more difficult. So yeah, it was a glorious day. Just heading out again onto the next segment. I have cut out most of the road sections because really no one's that interested. What I did find was that, again, whenever there's these slight dips in the trail, as you can see a few of them on here, I am still getting that bouncing, and it does still take a few sort of compression and release of the shocks before I get over the bounciness. So there is no rebound adjustment, there is no fancy valving on the shocks that come as stock. So perhaps that's something that will improve when I do an upgrade. But as of right now, and for the riding that I've done today, it's actually been fine. At no point did I feel that I was about to bottom out the suspension, and this is after I'd put 3 clicks onto the rear shock, so there is a little bit more there. The front does seem to dive quite a lot, but I wasn't going quick at any point, so it really wasn't a problem. This was just one of the first steeper hills that I was coming up to. I had remembered that I'd forgotten to turn the ABS off on the CRF300L and 300L Rally. By default, the ABS is always on, front wheel and back wheel. To turn it off at the back wheel, you can't turn it on at the front. You have to push that button, hold it in, and then it will disable the ABS at the back wheel. One thing to bear in mind is that if you ever turn off the ignition, it will reset to being on again. I think you can stop the bike, and I think if you just hit the kill switch but leave the ignition on, then it does remember it. But if you ever stall it and you actually turn the ignition off while you sort the bike out, then you will have to turn the ABS back on again. So ABS is always on at the front wheel, but actually over these trails it was absolutely fine, especially at the speeds that I was going. So down to the bottom of the hill and a left turn back onto a paved road. And for a novice like me, where I do feel like I have to concentrate a lot when I'm doing the off-road bits, especially when the rocks get loose, the way that the trail is arranged on the track that you follow, you do get these breaks. So you have an off-road stretch for sort of 5 or 10 minutes, and then you get to do some nice back lanes on paved roads for a while, before then turning on to the next section, and it just takes some of the concentration out of it. This trail was one of the faster sections of the day, so it was very hard packed, not a lot of climbs or falls, and not a lot of loose rocks, so I think it must be in fairly regular use as a farm track. There's also really good visibility, so you could see a long way up and very few other users on the trail. So it's great for building confidence. If you've never done anything like this before, several people had said to me I probably shouldn't go trail riding on my own, especially as a novice, but I know I've got mobile signal around here and I know I can come and be retrieved if I do have a problem. But yeah, it's just a great way to build your confidence, especially on a loose surface. And yeah, it's on a day like this, it was a little bit cold, I think would be the only thing I'd say, but I was having a really good time. I've done 7 miles so far. So far it's been about half limestone tracks, half on road, but they do seem to link up quite nicely and it's not that far between each one. So far the bike is behaving itself a lot better than when I rode it the first time. For those of you who've seen my first ride video, the bouncing is definitely less. The preloads helped a lot just to support me on it. Having the higher bars makes it slightly more comfortable, and I'm just getting used to it. I've also just passed the 150 mile mark on the bike, and there have been some reports that people were seeing almost like a mapping change, that there's more power after 150 miles. I must admit I haven't noticed that. I am still running it in, so I'm not revving it particularly highly. It does seem to be freeing up a bit, but I haven't noticed a significant power change. That said, for the trails that I've been doing, first gear, second gear has been absolutely fine. Third gear, riding 20-30 miles an hour, those sorts of speed, the bike has more than enough power. And even on the roads, it'll easily get up to 40, 50, 60 miles an hour very comfortably. So I have a few more miles to do today before I head home, so I'm going to carry on along the Trans-Euro Trail. I'm going to basically follow it until I get to the turning at Router Farm, which is just at the top of Winnett's Pass near Castleton, for those of you that know the area. That's pretty much the closest point to me. So when I get there, I'm going to head off over towards Edale and then down into the valley. And then when I come out again next time, I'll probably pick it up from where I got to and do another video of the next section. Now I'm heading back towards the main road, which links Sparrow Pit and then heads on down through to Tideswell. So this was the road that I did cross earlier on. The roads themselves are still pretty small, they're mostly farm tracks, and then the road itself heads down into Peak Forest, and then it's a right turn to take the small roads. I hadn't actually realised just how much of this was going to be paved, so even though I said in the opening that my intention was to ride up until Router Farm, and then instead of taking the right turn into the farm, I would instead turn left and head home. I felt I still had some off-road in me, so when I got to Router Farm, I did notice there's a sign on the gate which looked like it may have been closed. So I did just pull off for a minute instead of just heading over. And as you'll see, hopefully you can just about read from here, is that it was actually just a notice warning that cars and motorcycles were able to come through, but you have to stick on the trails. There have been some reports lately of people chasing sheep on bikes, and while we have a right of way across the land, it's at the farmer's discretion, and certainly straying off onto the fields or other parts of the trail isn't something that's really permitted. So I carried on along this trail. I was really lucky with the first few gates. Loads of mountain bikers out today because it's such a glorious day, and the timing just happened to work out that whenever I arrived at one gate, there was someone to hold it open or even close it after me. Not just mountain bikers, there's also plenty of walkers out, and people just seem to be in a good mood. Sometimes I've been slightly glared at, but I'm always very courteous, always very careful, and the bike is fairly quiet. So yeah, it's great to see people smiling and opening gates for people on motorcycles. Then again, it was another flattish section, so able to go a little bit quicker. Just getting some amazing views out over the tops. I'm not sure if you can quite see over to the left, but this is just coming over above the cement works in Hope, so that's really where we're heading to. I did finally come to one more gate that wasn't opened for me, and I'm sure you won't mind if I speed this up a little bit. Once the gate was closed, it was back on the bike and then carrying on. Still very, very similar conditions, hard-packed trail, some water accumulation along the way. There's definitely a temptation just to go riding through the middle of them, but it was also an opportunity just to get used to the steering and also trying to pick my way around them. After I got past the top bit, there was another descent. Now on the left-hand side, it looks like it's been a place where bikes and four-wheel drive trucks have been playing. Just over the dry stone wall to the right-hand side is the paved road that heads down and essentially follows the same track. So after getting back on the main road again, I had one more turn off the paved stretch, and the very last section of the day was running down, and this area is just above the cement works in Hope, and it's an old quarry. I think it's called Pindale. The top bit was actually quite steep, quite tight. I did bump into a couple of walkers coming up, and it's certainly not an area where you'd be able to fly past people. I did wonder what would happen if I encountered a 4x4 coming the other way, or even another motorcycle. Some of this section is just quite technical. It would be quite interesting to try coming up, but certainly coming down, it was something that I felt I really just had to pick my way down. Having said that, it was rather fun. I was quite glad that I didn't come off. I did feel like I was going to lose the front wheel a couple of times. But yeah, this was definitely the most technical part of my day. And the trail wound down and down. Some bits just had lots of loose rocks. I came through this section full of trees, and there's a bit up to the left-hand side which looked like a very steep hill, almost used for a hill climb. Just beyond that, there is a big wide open area on the right-hand side. There were some quad bikes playing around in there. I could hear the engines, and I did wave as I went past. I know there have been some problems in this area. It has been designated an area of special scientific interest, so once again it's really one to stick to the trails rather than just going and playing on the ground around it, regardless of how tempting it might be. Just past the entrance to the old quarry, there is this burnt out car just on the right hand side, but it's pretty easy to get around. And then after that, it's a fairly easy ride down, especially after coming through that steeper bit, down through the last few houses, and then you join the road again. You're back on the paved road just near the cement works. So that's pretty much the end of what I did of the trail. So I did get back onto the main road and then decided to head for Edale. The trail itself actually carries up just on the road here on the right hand side, just up there. So when I pick up the trail again on my next video from the Trans-European Trail through the White Peak, that's where I'll start from. But right now it's just the last few roads that bring me into the village of Hope, and then after that it's just the road heading back up towards Edale. And from Hope it's only about 4 miles for me to ride back home. So it's a very easy 4 miles to ride back down to Hope to pick up the trail from where I left it, and it's from there that I'll carry on in my part 2 of the Trans-European Trail. So there you go, safely back. I had quite a fun ride. I think I did about 15 miles in the end. including that descent down into Pindale, which was quite interesting. So for the things that on the bike, the suspension's definitely improved. Lowering the tyre pressures has helped a bit as well. I think I might even go down to 16 next time I go out. I think it'll just help a little bit more on those rocky sections. The GPS works better than I thought it would. I wasn't sure how easy it would be to follow that purple track on the Topo Maps on the Garmin, but given it's just a standard BMW Navigator 6 meant for on-road, I mean, it didn't give me the routing and the directions, but actually it's very easy to follow, and having the contours on the Topo Map helps a great deal. As for everything else on the bike, I think it's fine. I think some of the controls could do with a slight movement, which I'll have a look at this evening, but otherwise everything worked exactly as I'd hoped. So yeah, thanks for watching. If this has been interesting, please like and subscribe, and I'll be posting some more videos soon.